Sabrina Dahl had opened her salon in the charming town of Orchid Overlook only 2 months earlier, and already the place felt like home. Rows of pastel colonial houses lined the curved roads, each crowned by lush gardens whose flowers seemed to bloom a little more brightly than elsewhere in the world. Her salon, aptly named Daisy Locks, sat between a bakery and an antiques store, each business sporting a hand-painted sign. Sabrina felt she'd landed exactly where she belonged. She loved styling hair, listening to her clients' stories, and watching the day-to-day dramas of the local community unfold in her mirrored chairs. She had never been one for big cities or grandiose events. Small towns, with their cozy atmosphere and friendly gossip, were her preference. Until, that is, she discovered her cozy new life harbored a peculiar secret in the form of coded messages woven into her clients' elaborate hairstyles. The first sign of something unusual occurred on a Monday morning, when Harriet Townsend came rushing in with a frantic look. Harriet was one of the local socialites who carefully curated her social calendar around charitable events and casual garden lunches that were anything but casual. She sank into Sabrina's styling chair, phone clutched in manicured fingers, flipping frantically through screenshots or messages that Sabrina couldn't see. When Harriet requested an intricate braided updo with specific patterns, Sabrina obliged without hesitation. Yet as she twisted Harriet's honey blonde hair into braids and pinned them in place, she noticed tiny sequences of hair that Harriet insisted be woven in a precise manner. Harriet peered several times at a little note in her phone, occasionally murmuring, "Remember the pattern," as if the style bore some significance beyond its aesthetic. Sabrina filed away her curiosity and proceeded with the job. When Harriet left, she rushed out without her usual pleasant farewells or idle chatter. 2 days later, one of Harriet's closest friends, Fern Culpepper, arrived requesting a nearly identical hairstyle. The style was replete with thin accent braids crisscrossing in the back, pinned together with miniature, orchid-shaped clips. Fern, like Harriet, insisted on the braids following a specific method: 1 over, 2 under, then repeat. She also looked nervous, as if something gnawed at her from within. After finishing Fern's hair, Sabrina couldn't resist flipping back through her mental notes of Harriet's updo, recognizing the same odd pattern repeated in both designs. Perhaps she was seeing patterns where none existed, she thought. But as the week wore on and more socialites drifted through, their anxious expressions combined with bafflingly precise instructions suggested something else was afoot. Talia Brinkley, Ivy Ray Morgan, and Drusilla Pine all requested similarly particular styles, each woman consulting a slip of paper or a digital note with the instructions Sabrina had to follow. No one seemed willing to explain why they cared so deeply that a small section of hair went left, right, left, or up, down, up. At first, Sabrina assumed it was just a strange fashion fad the local elite had latched onto, like the time everyone wanted a single, bright turquoise streak in their hair. But the more Sabrina listened, the more she realized these were more than passing whims. Customers whispered about other parties, cryptic misunderstandings, and the need to ensure they had the latest version of the design. There was an undercurrent of tension. It was subtle, but Sabrina could sense it, as if everyone was stepping around a secret they dared not speak aloud. Eventually, Sabrina decided to do some investigating. She rummaged through her memory of Harriet's and Fern's instructions. 1 over, 2 under, repeat. She tried writing it down on a piece of paper, then translating each move to letters. However, the result was nonsense. She tried reversing it, skipping letters and other basic puzzle-solving attempts, but came up with nothing interpretable. She wondered if maybe it wasn't about letters at all. Perhaps it was referencing a date or a phone number or, more interestingly, a location. The more time she spent puzzling over it, the more engrossed she became. The quiet life she'd intended for herself in Orchid Overlook might not be so quiet after all. Her next clue arrived on a drizzle-filled afternoon. The door chimed as Bella Carmichael breezed in, umbrella in hand, wearing an elegant lilac trench coat. Bella was sweet-natured, always offering to help with town fundraisers, but she was also known for abruptly switching allegiances between her wealthy friends. She had Harriet's ear one week and voted with Fern to pick a new venue for an upcoming charity ball the next week. So when Bella requested yet another specially coded hairstyle, Sabrina wondered if Bella was a go-bean for conflicting parties. During the appointment, Bella tapped nervously on the armrests while she checked her phone, occasionally muttering, "I really hope this is correct, and they said it had to be perfect." When Sabrina gently asked, "Who is they?" Bella stammered, then blushed, claiming it was just a figure of speech. Sabrina pinned Bella's hair with the same orchid clips Harriet and Fern had chosen, noticing Bella had come with her own set of them. After Bella left, Sabrina glanced around to ensure no one else was in the salon. She took the next half hour, her last client for the afternoon wouldn't arrive until later, to investigate Bella's style. She mentally reconstructed the pattern. A series of braids going horizontal, then diagonal, pinned with the orchid clips in specific intervals. Each pinned position could correspond to a letter of the alphabet, Sabrina reasoned. She sketched a quick diagram. Braids A, B, C crossing each other and pinned in spots. 1, 2, 3. Mapping these out, she found the letters B, E, T, R, A, Y. She nearly dropped her pencil. Did it really spell betray? Or was she forcing an interpretation that wasn't there? She checked again. The positions were consistent. B, E, T, R, A, Y. That was hardly a coincidence. Two theories formed in her mind. One was that a group of friends was trying to sabotage a rival's public image and needed to pass clandestine messages to coordinate. The other was that they were collectively standing up to some unknown threat, using coded hair patterns to avoid detection. Neither scenario seemed particularly plausible, but none of this had seemed plausible to begin with. Sabrina decided to approach Harriet for answers. Harriet had been an early adopter of the pattern, so maybe she was at the center of whatever was unfolding. Sabrina called Harriet the next day and gently asked if she would come in for a quick trim or consultation about roots. Harriet arrived that afternoon after her Pilates class. She looked vibrant in her teal athletic set, though a line of worry persisted between her brows. Before Sabrina could broach the subject on her mind, Harriet started talking about the feud in the Orchid Garden Society. "Can you believe Camellia Melrose wants to hold her orchid competition on the same day as the Heritage Gala?" Harriet said, tossing her newly layered hair. "She's always trying to overshadow the rest of us." Sensing an opening, Sabrina carefully responded. "It sounds complicated. Your group does so many events, I can hardly keep track. Do you coordinate them somehow? Like maybe coded instructions?" She held her breath, hoping Harriet might confess. But Harriet's hazel eyes narrowed. "Coded?" She forced a laugh. "What on earth do you mean, Sabrina?" Her manner was too dismissive, as though she'd just realized she'd revealed more than she intended. When Sabrina let it drop, Harriet changed the subject to discussing new highlights. By the end of the appointment, Sabrina knew Harriet was guarding a secret, but coaxing it into the open would be trickier than she'd hoped. A breakthrough emerged from an unexpected corner. Gwendolyn Brock, an elderly but sharp-minded matriarch who had founded the Orchid Garden Society decades ago. No longer as active in committees, Gwendolyn mostly spent her days reading historical novels or crocheting in the park, but she still liked to keep her hair in neat silver curls, so she dropped by Daisy Locks for her monthly set and style. While Sabrina carefully rolled Gwendolyn's hair in purple rollers, the astute old woman asked, "Are the young ones causing trouble again, dear?" She had noticed Sabrina's pensive expression. At first, Sabrina tried to brush it off, but Gwendolyn insisted. "I can see your mind is working double time. Something's up." Sabrina decided to trust Gwendolyn's discretion, given her kind reputation. Keeping her voice low, she described the suspicious hairstyles and the coded message she'd uncovered. She expressed her bafflement that it spelled out the word betray. Gwendolyn's gentle smile turned serious. She inhaled sharply. "So, "They're doing it again," Gwendolen murmured half under her breath. When Sabrina asked for clarification, Gwendolen recounted a story from the 1970s, when the Orchid Garden Society had been embroiled in a power struggle. One faction had tried to dethrone the reigning matriarch at the time, passing secret notes and orchestrating sabotage efforts. Eventually, the truth emerged, but not without rifts that took years to mend. Perhaps they've dusted off that old tradition. Secret braids. How cunning. But why now? Gwendolen wondered. The next day, Sabrina was determined to gather more clues. She politely suggested to each of her new hairdo clients that perhaps they'd like to see the latest braiding technique she was working on. She would innocently test if they responded with excited recognition. Some hesitated, some got flustered, and at least one, Camellia Melrose herself, whipped out a piece of paper with instructions. "I've heard wonderful things about your braids, dear," Camellia cooed. "Please follow these steps precisely." Camelia's style, however, produced a different coded phrase. When Sabrina mapped out the orchid clip placements, it read, "Revenge." That gave her a chill. She realized that not all messages spelled out the same threat. Some spelled out words like lies, risk, or snare. It was as if each message was part of a larger puzzle, one that pointed to a looming showdown among these so-called friends. Trying not to spook her clients, Sabrina continued to collect as many hairstyle instructions as she could. She committed to memory each pinned pattern, scribbling them down whenever she had a moment alone. One evening, she spread the sketches across her dining room table. Put together, it formed what looked like a puzzle of words. Betray, revenge, lies, snare, fraud, and thief. A line of goosebumps rose on her arms. Had these women formed two rival squads hurling coded threats at each other via their hairdos? But how were they seeing each other's pinned messages? Sabrina realized if each person at a party recognized the code, the updos were effectively a public announcement to anyone in the know, silent to those not in the loop. Something big was coming soon, and it hovered dangerously close. Determined to prevent any real harm, Sabrina confided her full findings to Gwendolen, who listened intently from her armchair. Gwendolen suspected that the underlying cause was the upcoming Heritage Gala, which Harriet and her circle believed belonged under their leadership, while Camellia Melrose and her supporters felt it was their turn to shine. "They're using these hair codes to stir the pot. I suspect they're planning to sabotage the other group's big unveiling," Gwendolen said thoughtfully. "Every year, the Heritage Gala is where they show off the best orchid hybrids, and it's a point of pride for the entire town. If sabotage is in the works, it'll create a scandal." She turned her keen gaze on Sabrina. "We must ensure that doesn't happen. The gala is one of the things that keeps this town festive. It's meant for charity, not for secret warfare." Over the ensuing days, Sabrina and Gwendolen hatched a plan. First, they needed all the coded instructions pinned down literally. Sabrina cooperated by styling hair for both factions, gleaning each new coded phrase. Tracking them like puzzle pieces, she arranged them into what might be an overall sequence of words. She suspected that if each message repeated at an upcoming pre-gala event, it would reveal the sabotage's nature and timeline. The final straw came when Harriet requested Sabrina create a style that must signal the final blow. Sabrina pinned the braids, read the pattern, and discovered the word trap. If Harriet's group was planning a trap, it might take place the night of the gala. On the eve of the Heritage Gala, Gwendolen assembled a few well-placed townspeople who could intervene quietly if anything suspicious happened. The plan was to blend into the crowd, watch the hairstyles, and interpret the final clues. The Orchid Overlook Botanical Hall was transformed with twinkling string lights, floral displays bursting with color, and elegantly carved ice sculptures shaped like orchids. Sabrina meandered through the hall, greeted by friendly faces. Bella Carmichael waved from across the room, sporting yet another braided updo that spelled expose. Nearby, Harriet's hairstyle spelled guilt. Meanwhile, Camellia Melrose's spelled trick. Observing it all as if she were reading a secret conversation, Sabrina saw that each message fit into a cryptic confrontation, as if they were pushing for a grand reveal. However, Sabrina still couldn't discern the exact sabotage plot, just that tensions were simmering dangerously high. Amid the swirl of cocktail dresses and trays of canopies, Harriet took the stage to welcome everyone. She made a polite speech about the tradition's long history and the importance of community. Yet Sabrina noticed Harriet's voice tremble, her eyes darting around as though anticipating a confrontation. Soon after Harriet stepped down, Camellia, not to be outshone, made her way to the microphone, offering a competing speech that stressed the new direction the society was poised to take. The coded words in each hairstyle across the room seemed to glimmer like hidden messages in plain sight, fueling a quiet undercurrent of tension. Gwendolen, sipping lemonade near the back, gave Sabrina a nod, signaling readiness to intervene if hostilities escalated. Moments later, Harriet beckoned for everyone's attention, a forced smile on her face. "I'd like to present the highlight of this year's gala, a brand new orchid hybrid, rumored to be the most splendid bloom our town has ever seen." A hush fell. Camellia stiffened. Sabrina recalled hearing that Camellia herself had been cultivating a rare orchid for months. Harriet continued, "We've called this variety Aurora's Whisper. Unfortunately, the orchid is missing." Gasps echoed through the hall. Harriet's gaze locked on Camellia, who was equally stunned. "Perhaps someone here wanted to sabotage our big reveal," Harriet concluded. Camellia stepped forward, eyes flashing with indignation. "Don't you dare accuse me," she said. "I never even knew the name of your precious new hybrid." Harriet's face hardened. A swirl of half-whispered chatter broke out among the elegantly dressed attendees. Sabrina realized the sabotage Harriet's group had been hinting at must be the theft of the orchid. But Camelia's shock didn't appear feigned. She looked genuinely mystified and offended. Sabrina spotted Bella's expression, which seemed torn behind guilt and fear. Quietly, Sabrina maneuvered behind the stage. A tall arrangement of potted orchids sat in the shadows, some in bloom, some in protective covers. Searching through the arrangement, she discovered a hidden pot. When she carefully lifted the cloth covering it, a brilliant lavender orchid glowed under the stage lights. It looked exotic, with delicately speckled petals that seemed to shimmer. This could only be Aurora's Whisper. The pot had a small note taped to the side. "We have your precious orchid. Surrender the leadership publicly, or it stays hidden." Sabrina shook her head, incredulous. She carried the orchid onto the stage, attracting a chorus of gasps. Harriet blinked rapidly. How did you find it?" Camellia remained silent, mouth agape. The larger group stared, uncertain who was behind the threat. Finally, Sabrina cleared her throat. "This was all a ploy," she said, voice calm but firm. "Someone wanted each side to believe the other was scheming, culminating in an orchid theft to shame Harriet's group. The coded hairstyles carried words like betray, revenge, trap, meant to set you all on edge." She glanced meaningly at Bella, whose eyes flicked downward. Harriet slowly turned to Bella. "It was you?" Bella seemed on the verge of tears. "No." "Well, yes, but not alone. I hated seeing you two at each other's throats. I wanted Harriet's group to suspect Camelia's group and vice versa, so you'd realize how damaging this rivalry could become. I thought if tensions escalated, maybe someone would intervene, end the feud for good." She wrung her hands. "I know it was foolish. I panicked when I saw you all trying to outdo each other, and I wanted to scare everyone into making peace." Her taxicab confession hung in the hush. "I took the orchid and hid it here, leaving that note. The coded hairstyles? That was my partner's idea." Eyes darted around. I'm so sorry." A figure stirred from the back of the crowd. Phoebe Clifton, a longtime resident known for her intense interest in puzzle-making. Head bowed, she shuffled regretfully onto the stage. I helped Bella contrive the code. I believed that if we orchestrated a grand puzzle, it might highlight the pettiness and bring you all together, she admitted. But as we saw the rumors spiral, it got out of hand. Bella panicked, and I wasn't brave enough to tell her to stop. I never imagined how much damage we'd cause. Harriet and Camille exchanged astonished glances. Perhaps they realized, for a moment at least, that their rivalry had set off a chain reaction leading to this fiasco. Silence reigned for several beats, followed by Harriet stepping forward, meeting Camelia's gaze. "I've been so focused on ensuring no one outdoes me or tarnishes my family's name," Harriet admitted. "I'm sorry if we made you feel this was the only option, Bella. I suppose I've been stubborn, seeing you all as rivals instead of colleagues." Camelia gave a small nod. "Likewise, I suppose I got carried away with my quest for recognition. I didn't want Harriet hogging everything." Tension visibly eased among the circle of socialites. In a small-town way, that might be as close to a heartfelt reconciliation as they could get. They collectively turned their attention to the orchid, still in Sabrina's arms. Grateful that the sabotage had been uncovered, Harriet suggested they dedicate the orchid not to her family or Camelia's, but to the Orchid Garden Society as a whole. "Let this bloom be a reminder of what can happen when we let petty rivalries overshadow our shared passions," Harriet said, her tone kinder. Applause rippled through the hall, but it was a relieved sort of applause. Bella and Phoebe apologized profusely, promising to end the coded messages. Sabrina, for her part, felt the tension dissolve from her spine. She handed the orchid to Harriet and Camelia, who carefully set it on a special display table. When Harriet turned to Sabrina, the hairdresser sensed gratitude in Harriet's eyes. The unsaid thanks reflected Harriet's relief that everything had been resolved without irreparable damage. As the evening wore on, the atmosphere lightened. Pianists resumed playing gentle melodies, couples wandered among the floral displays, and friends teased each other in hushed conversation. Sabrina chatted with Gwendolen, who patted her hand. "You did well, my dear. I suspect the next time someone tries coded hair messages, they'll think twice, knowing you're onto them." Sabrina laughed softly, imagining that from now on, her clients might just stick to standard updos for special events. Perhaps the socialites had learned a valuable lesson. Rivalries might persist. This was Orchid Overlook after all. But at least they'd be less likely to sabotage one another publicly. Or if they did, they wouldn't do it by weaving cryptic words into their curls. Diaphanous curtains fluttered in the open windows of the botanical hall, allowing in a gentle evening breeze that carried the delicate scent of orchids. Sabrina found a moment to stand outside on the terrace, gazing at the moonlight illuminating the foliage. She breathed a long sigh filled with relief and satisfaction. This was what she loved about living in a small town. Even when chaos erupted, there was a warmth and willingness to face it together. As she closed her eyes, the last notes of the piano played behind her, and she thought of what advice she'd give herself if she could go back to that first suspicious hairstyle. She would say, "Don't doubt your instincts, keep an open mind, and remember, good hairdressers aren't just stylists, they're also detectives of the heart." Sure enough, in the days that followed, the talk of the secret code and the sabotage plot brushed across the town like a passing storm. Bella and Phoebe did their best to patch any lingering rifts with Harriet and Camelia. The rebellious coated hairstyles vanished, replaced by simpler, ironically matching chignons for the next event, an orchid brunch. Sabrina noticed Harriet and Camelia exchanging polite laughs at that brunch, as if privately acknowledging they'd come too close to letting rivalry tear their beloved society apart. Even across the swirl of drama, Daisy Locks thrived, with townspeople popping by for fresh looks and a dash of real conversation. And though Sabrina doubted she'd ever see another coded hairstyle in the near future, she kept a small journal of braid combinations, just in case. After all, In a place like Orchid Overlook, one never knew when a new puzzle or feud might bloom, and it never hurt to be prepared.